Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Nice to be here with you, Alex. It's good to see that you're in Sydney, just coincidentally. So I'm in Sydney. So here we are in a beautiful day. It's almost spring-like weather yesterday and
Beautiful.
today after a big cold winter we've had. So, yeah, welcome to a sunny, beautiful last of winter day in
Thank
Sydney.
you. It's quite entertaining for me to hear a bloody cold winter day, and I'm like there
Yeah,
sweating cobs. Maybe I'm gonna get a
exactly.
tan, maybe I won't, maybe I'll just get red.
Yes, definitely, mate. Yeah.
What is your definition of mastering oneself?
Look, it's a topic that, of course, is perennial. It's been going on since who knows? I mean, the Greeks were really into this called know thyself.
Hmm.
The oracle and know thyself, and it's been picked up. Hindu religion has it. All the philosophies talk about it, and ultimately, even like Abraham Maslow, or go through all the psychiatrists, the psychologists, all the ancient wisdom. It all comes down to they boil it down to know thyself. So to know thyself means to have really good self-awareness, just really be self-aware of who you are, what you're thinking, what you're doing, and translate that across into self-knowledge is where your belief systems are and your value systems are. And you put those two together, and they're not easy to do because most people don't even have self-awareness, let alone self-knowledge. But from self-awareness to self-knowledge combined, you can end up with a thing called self-mastery, which for me is a combination of simultaneously integrated mind, body, and spirit. And mind and body, which are already, in most people, already siloed out into either it's all mind problems or it's a body thing. It's, from my holistic point of view, is simply the third component that's missing constantly and yet is referred to constantly, and that is the spirit. Not like as in spirituality or as in religion, but the spirit. And we've just seen the Olympic spirit, haven't we? Been amazing. And the fighting spirit, you've been to New Zealand, we have a thing called the Anzac spirit, which was born through the amazing efforts of the New Zealanders and Australian, particularly the troops in Gallipoli, never gave up. So they call that the Anzac fighting spirit. So for me, the fighting spirit means they had the resolve to rebound, to rebound, to be back to your best. But you've got to do the work to build the foundation for that. And the foundation is simply self-awareness, and actually self-awareness also involves situational awareness. A lot of people don't have they don't have the ability or the operating system to understand that the situation that you're in, appraise it objectively, look at it, and then look at yourself and your own self. How am I reacting to this set of circumstances? How can I improve it, or how can, whatever? And then out of that, you'll find it'll align with your value systems and your belief, which is your self-knowledge, your self-esteem, and all those things. And that will feed into having self-mastery. No, it doesn't come without great effort. A lot of people think everything's cognitive. Oh, I can have this, I can think that. And, yes, of course. But no, true self-knowledge is, even when you go and do martial arts, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And even the great philosophers talk about it's the experience of self-knowledge where you're actually then developing that into self-mastery on a foundation where, for example, a quick one is, you ask people to hold their breath and they hold it for maybe 30, 40 seconds and they got to breathe again. Ask them to don't breathe. They'll get to know who they are very quickly. And it's the doing reps, you're doing 10 reps with a very heavy weight and a bench press. You've done your 10, do another two. So you've got to keep going. And so what's happened really, Alex, in the world that we live in? People have forgotten that the word evolution just was not about the environment we live in. It wasn't just about the evolution of the animals. It was meant to be the evolution of ourselves as a conscious being. And we haven't evolved that consciousness except in great big pockets, which is great. We talk about consciousness and we talk about heightened consciousness and we get into those fields as well. And it's important to understand that. But in the main, the average person is operating on a very low vibrancy, low vibration frequency of hardly any awareness at all. And I saw it today. I've just come from the city, people walking around, either looking at their phones down the street, smacking into other people. People walk in front of you. My business partner's in a wheelchair. They walk in front, couldn't care less if he's in a wheelchair or not. So I'm constantly getting reminders about self-awareness attached to self-situational awareness. But because of my training, I say you can train people to have these things. And when people talk about they go to the Olympics, they talk about all the training they did, whether it be the great swimming or whether it be pole vaulting, they talk about training, mind training, physical training, physiological training. And the spirit has to be trained to learn to fight, to rebound. And it's very difficult. People would rather be on an armchair and say, "Oh, look, I wish I could have been that person." And I think of it like this, people will plan a trip to go away on a holiday for 2 to 3 weeks. They'll put so much effort into that planning of that trip to go away for 3 weeks, but they'll never spend a whole year going on the greatest journey of all, that's into themselves, where the greatest treasure is, where the greatest joy is, and in fact, build a foundational self-belief system and self-strengths so that, you know, as with neuroscience, if we keep constantly thinking negatively and we keep doing things and get in a rut, well, we've actually trained our neurons to be in a rut. And the only way you get out of a rut is get a quick slam dunk. Like as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get in the ring, get that first punch in the face. So look, I hope that is helpful for you, but that's just a quick understanding of what I think of as self-mastery. A lot of work, a lot of training.
I completely agree. I quite often go down a rabbit hole mentally, just sat fucking staring at the birds or whatever, just thinking, how much are we forgetting and laying by the wayside, pursuing quote unquote stereotypical academia? Okay.
Correct.
It is binary, it's yes, no, it is a ladder system. Once you've completed this, you go to the next one. And then it's a yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Don't think outside the box, think within it. You get your paycheck at the end of the month, shut the fuck up and carry on. And I quite think I'm like, well, if we've got these books, like the most famous one, Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, if we've still got these books and we're still reading them, and you talk to all the quote unquote greats, people who changed civilizations, there's a common trend of the books that they've actually read and taken wisdom from, and they're thousands of years old, right? So you're like, okay, if we're supposed to be the most technologically advanced we have ever been, if we're supposed to be the smartest we've ever been, why are we still learning from 2,000, 3,500 years ago and applying it now and it making the greatest impact? So my blonde brain says, what are we forgetting? What are we pushing to the fringes that we should actually be spending more time with? And I do agree with, almost like yourself, figure out who the fuck you are, and don't ever forget it, and go on this journey that's going to tear you apart and rebuild you, and it's just going to mold you and shape you and terraform the whole environment that's around you. And I guess I got a question for you of, why do you think people don't do it?
That is another question. That's a perennial question. In fact, a lot of people ask it in all sorts of things, whether they go to therapy or whether they're not in therapy, whether they're talking to the neighbor and their neighbor's worried about them, and all these things. It's a very difficult thing. I mean, the cynics say that there's only 5% of the population ever want to be leaders. The rest are going to be followers. And of that 5%, there's only going to be a percentage of them that really want to actually make a difference to the world. And that's the truth. You can just look at the world today. So in other words, where are those pathfinders, those people who are, supposedly, whether they be like Mother Teresa or whoever, Nelson Mandela, although they've got their dark stories too, but they were trying not necessarily change the world, where people seem to pick that up as a cliche. They've actually tried to influence the world, one person at a time, and then collectively. And there's a difference between people coming out with these big statements, I'm going to change the world. You can't change the world. And today, there's 6 billion people. You can't change the environment. What you can do is influence things. And if you can influence one or two people, and there's a lovely little story. I didn't write. I read this somewhere. A little girl's walking along a beach, and the beach has had a high tide, and it's going out. And left on the high tide on the beach, like shells, are all these starfish. And so she's walking along, a little girl walking along, and she's picking a starfish up, and she puts it carefully back in the water. And she's done a little bit of, 10 or 15 feet. And this old grumpy man walks up to her, an older guy, and he says, "What are you doing?" She says, she's thinking to herself, "Are you stupid? You can see what I'm doing." But anyway, "I'm putting the starfish back in the water." And as she's saying that, she's reached down, she's picked up another one, she's got it in the hand. And he says, well, what are you doing that for? You can't make any difference. You can't make any real difference. There's too many of them. He went to the water, put it in. She said, yes, but I have to that one.
Mm.
And you know, I mean, I've been a school teacher, you know, and a life coach. I just think we get too carried away with our own self-importance. I'm not going to try and change anybody. Nobody needs to be changed at all. What they just need to be given the opportunity is to have a pathway into themselves. Now, a lot of people are too scared to go into themselves because they're afraid there's nothing in there. It's not what they're going to find. They're going to find nothing. And I believe that. I flip that. Whereas people say, oh, you're too scared to go and find out who you are because you're probably a dark devil. No, most people got nothing inside. They're scared of that. So think of it like this, Alex. If most people are going to go on a big journey, whether it be a holiday or an expedition or whatever, they make sure they're equipped for it. Because why? They want to survive. They want to continue breathing. They want to have a life that has meaning. But you ask them to think, well, hang on, don't go anywhere. Just sit in that chair for a minute and let's just have a little chat about a few things. I'm going to give you a couple of exercises to do, which are experiential. And then you'll begin to understand to overcome any obstacles in this exercise I'm giving you, you're going to need certain knowledge. You're going to have certain equipment within you, skill-based, to overcome this thing that I'm going to give you to do. And the tools for that are so important. Ultimately, those tools are going to lead you to complete self-knowledge. I know that sounds a bit too bloody hard to me. I haven't got time for that. I've got time for a 3-week holiday. I haven't got time for myself to go in there. And, you know, I laugh about it because I'm not cynical. Coming back to your question is most people do not have that spark of curiosity about who they really are. They don't have the spark of curiosity. And yet, you know, Alex, yourself, you've traveled the world now. You go places, you're curious to the language, the food, the culture, the built landscape, the natural landscape. You're curious. Most people go on packaged tours, 3 weeks, 3 weeks in Europe.
You're talking about the Brits now.
Well, Australians are terrible because they go on all these package holidays like to Canada for 3 weeks and people do it. And I ask them big questions. They've got the surface knowledge, but average person doesn't have the curiosity to realize that it's we, the humans, that have created the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not curious about how we operate, how can we make the world operate a little better every day? How can we?
I think you summed it up in that one word. And to be honest, I've learned to almost create my own little love story with the word curious. You know, being back home, we're all products of our environment, right?
Yes.
Especially an environment where we were malleable children, right? Let's say. And you get stuck. You certainly do get stuck in this closed, or at least I was, and folks around me, closed, fearful, irrational, aggressive, violent mindset. It just kind of lashes out and it becomes this kind of, you know, Mr. Hyde. That's one snap of the fingers away from just tearing through the streets of Paris. And you actually go out and you rub shoulders with enough people and you see enough places and you eat enough food and you listen to enough music and you're like, wow, there is a oneness in diversity. But within those fringes of diversity, there's way more similarities than there are differences. Way more.
Look, absolutely. And, you know, the thing is, you know, people have got to take some degree of robust thinking into their life. Like you've just hinting at there. I mean, when I talk about things like, and bigger people than us have talked about it before us, including Tesla, is about, you know, if I say to somebody, think of a radio program and how do you get to be on your favorite show? Oh, well, I tune it, don't I? And they go, yeah, you do. I said, can you imagine that the whole world is on a frequency? The whole world is on a frequency. What do you think that frequency is? You hear it, you tune into a radio, you get a certain station, then you hear music and you hear a presenter or whatever. So you're hearing something. Is that correct? Yeah, that's true. So have you ever thought that the fact the whole universe is in just one large amplified frequency? Just to be very basic for a moment. They go, oh, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? I said, so just imagine when you said you've had an intuition or you had a gut feeling about something, is it possible that there was a vibratory frequency around you at the time that might have just hooked into your frequency? Well, yeah, I could agree with that. So that's how I try and explain it to them without going too much into the fifth dimension and, all the psychic side of things, and people can get it. And because now science tells us more and more, and yet all the yogis have known this for thousands of years, haven't they? The concept of a consciousness, a heightened consciousness, and into other dimensions. And Sadhguru talks about it a lot, and I think he's very, very, very educated the way he says it, and very well said. But the average person will agree to intuition, but they don't want to spend the time understanding what it could be. Do you understand that? They can
Mm.
accept it. They don't want to understand what it could be. Question I have, Alex, you might think, why don't they want to understand?
I think most people are scared of what they actually can achieve. I think about one of my favorite movies of all time is Coach Carter, right? And at
Oh,
the end
yes,
it says, "It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us."
yes.
And I think, first of all, I think it's one of the greatest piece of literature ever written. And actually, the actor, I don't know his name, but he fucking nailed it. Um, but I think it's also true. I think people are scared of like, oh, what happens if I actually succeed? And if I just keep doubling down and putting all my effort in and be curious and just fucking dive in head first, like where am I going to end up? Who am I going to be? What is going to be around? What am I going to be able to achieve? And that's all unknown. And I think that scares people. And if they hinder themselves, they, yes, sir, I'll just turn up, do my thing, go home. They can predict what their life is going to be in 30, 40 years. And I think that has a level of comfort because they know what's coming, and the only unpredictability is the football game at the weekend, right? And whether they're and
I
whether they're
love
going to
that.
get glassed or anything, and they don't have to be curious, right? Like they can keep their
No,
mind closed, and it
yeah,
almost becomes comfortable.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, I almost sit on the side of like, you know what? If that's genuinely how you want to live your life, who the fuck am I to tell you any different? Like that's absolutely
absolutely.
sound. You
That's
know,
that's it.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm more of myself, of us like, and the people that I choose to be surrounded by, of like, yeah, but what happens if we do keep doubling down? Like, where
Mm,
is the actual line for us as
mm,
individuals, but then us as a collective of the planet? What is the line?
mm.
Because all these things. I mean, we thought a computer was impossible. We thought a flying bird was impossible. We thought the 4 minute mile was impossible. It was like, okay, but if we just keep on doubling down and we keep on, all right, let's do it. See where it goes. Where will we
Yes.
lead? Where will we end up? And that to me really fascinates the hell out of me. But I think I have a hypothesis. I think that for most people it scares them and it makes them step back rather than step forward.
Oh, it's a really good point, and I know we're generalizing because there are a lot of really good people, and let's just say, for example, small villages and small country towns, who are the salt of the earth. They'll do
Yeah.
anything for you, and they don't need to evolve any further. They've already got a great compassion in their heart. They're kind, they're thoughtful, very supportive. And if that's some of the criteria of being an enlightened human being, I'll have some of that, thank you, because that's wonderful. And I'm a country kid, so I grew up with that, and it's only in the cities, particularly in the cities, and I'm generalizing, but in the cities where people have urbanized and become dog eat dog and cynical
Mm.
and greed, 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 and I've got more than you, that's the thing. But ultimately, what we're getting down to is the operating of a human being. And if we thought possibly that one of the attributes of a human being for being on this earth, and we are not here to judge anybody, is to do as much good as you can and as little harm as possible. Now,
Mm.
that's a pretty easy thing to think about, and most people find it very difficult to do. And yet, I've got friends and I've got acquaintances and that in my life who operate on exactly that: do as much good as you can, little harm as possible. make sure everything's safe, everything's protected. I'm working on a very big project right now with my business partner, a young guy in the wheelchair, and the thing that we've taken it to a company and we're joint venturing with them. It's called Hope is Hopeless Without Action, and the catch cry to it is transform hope through action, because everyone's talking about hope, but it's like wishful thinking and dreamlike. It's not actually anything. It's just rhetoric. So we're establishing it. We're about to launch it big at the moment. But I guess in my life, having been a school teacher and a teacher and a life coach and all these things, I just find in my average life, wherever I am, people start talking and ask if I can talk with them based on the fact that I don't want anything from them. I don't want anything from them. And I think when you take out the monetary transactional thing, Alex, like our conversation is transformational. And it's only transformational in the sense that we're sharing knowledge and new perspectives, and we're enjoying it. We're enjoying that. Your perspective is good for me and mine is for you. So it's not transactional, but in society, because the world we live in now, particularly with all the influences and all the stuff, it's a transactional world. And that's the sad part to me. And there's no growth in there, no growth in transactional, because someone has to give more than the other one's got. It's definitely that. And where your talk the things you're talking about, which resonate with me obviously very deeply, is this journey of self-discovery. And out of self-discovery, there is self-awareness. There's got to be, and then there's got to be self-knowledge, and then self-mastery. But you've got to simultaneously fire up your mind, your body, and your spirit, like you've talked about this a bit earlier with me and before we started the podcast. And I keep coming back to one of the great things is about the spirit, to overcome, to rebound, to have resilience of everything, psychological resilience, physical resilience, biological resilience. So if I want to be a human being, trying to live as much wellness as I can and as much psychological well-being as I can, I can't leave it to others. I've got to take some ownership on that. And that's the thing that people won't do. Like as you mentioned, they will go to the doctor, get like prescription for paracetamol, or they'll go and get something for this, or they'll go to this guru who's got the silver bullet, and they'll come away, and 3 weeks later they're back to where they used to be. Where is the self-ownership? If you go into a small village, indigenous tribe, you have to be self-sufficient. And you get initiated in it. If you fail, you're gone. We don't have that self-initiating landscape to work within in modern society. And yet when we go into war zones and we're suddenly becoming to be a soldier, we're confronted with all sorts of realities, and most importantly, death. And all of a sudden you go, oh, I need this resource, I need that resource, and I hope I'm going to survive, That's when the rubber hits the road for me. And that's why one of my simplest exercises is to get people to hold their breath, and just when they think they're going to need to do it, don't breathe. And if you are going to breathe eventually, why are you breathing? What's your purpose? Why do you need to breathe? Is your life so exciting that you need to breathe? It's quite brutal, but it's true. Why do you need to breathe?
Sometimes the brutal lessons are the ones that we need the most.
Well, look, I mean, I'm old enough to say I know a lot of people who have been in wars and done all sorts of things and have trained with them as well in martial arts. And they're the ones that have got the greatest grasp of reality, the greatest respect for other human beings. The ones that have been in war and survived have got more respect for life and other human beings than anyone else on this earth. You can be the greatest philosopher, you can be the greatest pontificator, you can have the greatest good and compassion in your heart. But if you've never been actually in this position where you've had to be shot or be killed or kill someone else, you don't really appreciate what death is and what life really means. You don't. It's all pretend. It's all pretend. And, when you hear about people who've been doing these big climbing Mount Everest and they get into difficulties and they have a big bloody wake-up call, don't they? And a lot of them who don't make it. Or that famous story, that young guy caught in the crevice in the mountain with his leg. He could either cut the leg off or die there. Well, he cut his leg off. He has a great appreciation, he reckons, for life. There was a guy in San Francisco, Alex, would be 10 or 12 years ago. It's quite famous now, but he's one of the few that survived by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, which has been notorious, as you know, for suicides. And they put up these giant, wires and that to stop people, but people still get through. Anyway, one guy jumped and he ended up being on Oprah Winfrey. He survived. And she said to him, so tell me, the story. And he told her, and she said, now tell me this. When you were standing up there, and it's quite a long way to the ground, and you know damn well when you hit the water at like 300 miles an hour, whatever velocity it is, you would pretty much be guaranteed to die. He said, yeah, that's why I was going to do it. So, well, what were your thoughts in the first second after you jumped and there was nothing but you and air? And he said, my first thought was, fuck, what have I gone and done? He said, my next thought was I was unconscious, velocity. So she said, so how do you feel about life now? He said, I am so disgusted with myself that I took it for granted. And I was so self-important, I needed to die. Now, that's when I'm in a reality call. All the people whinging about this, those poor people now in all the refugee camps around the world, all the poor people that are getting bombed in the Ukraine, the Gazian thing. Think of all those little lives, animals and people alike, that are being crushed, suffocated, hunger, pestilence, now polio. Think of those lives. And I say that recently at a function. People just stop carrying on with their whinging. Oh, the rates are going up and I can't afford this and we can't afford that and we won't go on this holiday. I'm going, for God's sake, you're lucky to be alive to have a holiday. So gratitude, where's it gone? Appreciation, where's it gone? Being replaced by entitlement and expectations.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have got into fitness in terms of working in it for about, I don't know, about 14 years. And I was also privileged enough to work with kids and adults when I first started and have done ever since, right? And a big thing that I think about, and a reason why I've been thinking about it a lot recently, is because I've been having a lot of conversations about it, is the evolution of kids, right? Over that time. And I started, 14 years ago. Yeah, you get the shit bags, no problem. But we're still a little bit rough and ready. We're still a little bit more robust. We can still communicate. We can still deal with hardship, quote unquote hardship, right? They're not,
Yeah.
they're not getting bombed. Now, on the other hand, is a different fucking story, right?
Yeah.
And I can sum it up with one word: everyone is fucking entitled. They believe that it is their God-given right to X, Y, Z. And it's like, it's not. Nothing is ever given. Everything is earned. And life is so easily taken away. Like, I think we've almost believed our own arrogance that we are the apex predator. It's like, yeah, oh, fuck this world pandemic thing. I was like, yeah, but people still died. Okay? I don't care where you sat on the fence. People died of the common cold. People got hit by a car. A plane came down. Yeah, but statistically speaking, yeah, great. But it is so precious and it can be taken away like this. And people just almost believe their own arrogance. We walk around with this godlike philosophy. In the recent book that or the most recent book I wrote, one of the passages was essentially like, I hope that mankind never cracks immortality, not because of overpopulation, not because of anything like that, because I think our own ego would inflate so much that I fear where we would end up. I think we would believe that we would sit level side by side with the gods, and we would basically become Odin and Zeus and hating the immortals. And I fear that ego inflation. I really do. And it's always a balancing act, right? It's like you want to look after the next generation and the generation around you and learn from the ones previous. But you can't look after them so much where you protect them from everything. We almost have to get slapped around a little bit to wake up, to realize, oh shit, like the world is beautiful, but it's also, I mean, a nasty place sometimes. And like we have to be a little bit tougher. We have to be hard to break, and that is what I got obsessed with so many years ago in fitness. It was like, well, it's got nothing to do with you doing a fucking squat and a burpee and martial arts and weights and stuff. It's like, let's be harder to break mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all types of stuff. And then we're going to go out there and we're going to, like, fingers crossed, be better people for it, better human beings. Yeah, entitlement. You said that and it just rang that alarm bell in my head. I was like, that's it. That's it. People believe their own bullshit. They really do.
Yeah, and look, it's such a big topic, isn't it? I mean, as I say, there are a lot of amazing people who are not necessarily self-aware. They're not necessarily self-knowledge or self-mastery, but there are some pretty amazing, wonderful, good people,
Yeah.
compassionate people in very dire straits or not in dire straits. They haven't been trained for anything, but they have almost an intrinsic, inherent goodness in them, and we can talk about nature and nurture, but there are people, and you've met them, we all meet them, that are just intrinsically good. They
Yeah.
feel good. They don't have any agenda with you. And you meet them and you say, thank you, God, for giving that person into my life. And you go on. And then you meet a whole bunch of assholes and people who are really trying to screw you over. But, there's one or two gems that you meet. And I've been lucky to meet quite a few of them in my life, at least 10. Um, and they don't have any preparation for it other than that's the way they were born. And maybe they were helped by some of them came from terrible situations, some came from good ones. But there was something inside them that was a ballast that they were born with. And that's what everyone searches for and goes to training for. And a lot of people are born with it, an inborn buoyancy, an inborn optimism, but not blind faith, but realistically so. Now, I honor those people because I've met quite a few of them. But in the main, in the 6 billion people on this earth, and let's just talk about the Western civilization in the main, because that's where we're coming from, is that the majority of them are asleep. And this has been a topic for how many thousands of years people are asleep and they need to wake up. And so when they came out with this thing about being woke, this stupid left wing thing, they don't know what they're talking about. They're talking about, this, that, emotional intelligence, all that sort of stuff, but they're not talking about the real thing. To be truly awake is to be truly awake in the sense of I am only part of the whole universe. It's not me. The sun doesn't get up in the morning just for me. It's for all of us, And I think having that sense of understanding where you are one small drop in the ocean, which is so important to have a feeling of, and then to find those who are like-minded, like talking with you today, so that's a wonderful, gracious thing, because we are, what's the word, combining our thoughts and knowledge base to hopefully evolve our own knowledge a bit further, which we are. But look, I just don't think the general population per se is wanting to do anything other than, as you said earlier, have a job,
Mm.
get married, have arguments, go to the pub or go and watch football or go skiing or whatever it is, But when it comes to doing any work for themselves, they'll build a house, they'll renovate the house. They'll renovate it 3 or 4 times in their lifetime, but they won't renovate themselves.
Mm.
So you get joy out of the simplest pleasures, I'm sure you do. I get joys out of the simple things. So there's an old saying, who said it? He said it. It's an old saying. It might have been Rumi. I can't remember. He said, I know it's a Sufi saying, don't speak unless you can improve on silence.
Mm.
Now, it's profound because, I know we're talking because this is the podcast, but in the main, I speak, I speak a lot less than I ever used to with every passing year because I find so much joy in silence. And I find people get unsettled when I'm not talking. They're wondering, they're trying to think what you're thinking. I couldn't care less what anyone's thinking. Be silent. Enjoy your silence. There's no need to talk unless you need to talk. But when you come, sorry, I was just going to say, when you come back to your topic you mentioned about entitlement, everyone feels they've got to have something to say.
Yeah, people want to be first. People have, they want to be heard, but I don't think they have anything to say. They really don't. They will just. There's nothing there. You're like, okay, here's the microphone. Oh, okay. Here's my undivided attention. They're like, okay. I was like, it's like you ask them, how's your day been? Good. Why has it been good? What do you want me to say? I don't know. Like, is there anything behind that? Because if there isn't, just don't fucking talk to me. It's okay. We don't have to do this small talk, surface level, quick fix. We don't have to do that, like.
No, we don't. And, it doesn't matter whether it's Jordan Peterson or whether it's Marcus Aurelius or all the Stoics or whether it's Sadhguru and all the others in between. They all say the same thing. You don't have to be in anyone's presence that isn't really going to be of any um, resonance with you without any kind of acceptance of anything other than them wanting to be hollow and talking to you about nothing. And, I was on the train coming here to get back to my apartment, and I was listening to some conversations accidentally, and it's just absolutely their conversations are empty. But
Mhm.
as I say, as long as they don't involve me in their life and waste my life and my time, because my time is for me to do as much as good as I can in the world. And if people are taking up my time and stopping me from doing that, then I call a red line. That's my red line.
Hmm. You got to put limits on how much you give because takers don't put limits on how much they take.
That's a great saying too. I've never heard that before. I like that.
Hmm.
Absolutely. In fact, they're the opposite, aren't they? They just subtract all the time and leave you drained. But yeah, and we've all been through that, haven't we? But there are times when you just got to call it quits and say, "Sorry, I haven't got time now."
Hmm. Anyway,
Yeah,
brother, that's our time. Thank you so much. Before it kicks us out, I just want to say thank you. This has
yeah,
honestly been another honor and a privilege.
yeah. Well, how long are you going to be in Sydney for? Maybe send me an email sometime and we'll catch up
Let's do
and we're
it. Let's
going to
grab
have
a
a
coffee.
coffee. And I'll introduce you to young Matt as well, the boy in the wheelchair.
I love it.
All right. Yeah.
Brother, you have a
Right,
great
Alex.
weekend and we'll touch base next week.
Thank you very much, mate. See you later.
Awesome.
Bye.